Okay, we are good. Good evening, everybody here and on Zoom and around the world. Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, start out with liaisons. We have a few here. I know Town Manager Dave Cox is here, and we have Mr. Reich and Ms. Moore from the council. So we'll start with them. Any comments, questions, public remarks from you guys? And I'm not hearing any. And we have Mr. Hine here from the Board of Finance. Comments, Board of Finance?
Just wait to hear what you come up with.
Okay. And Lady Union, Mr. Shalansky, I see you're there. I don't know if you heard me. Hopefully you're cooking something good for dinner.
Yeah, just trying to multitask. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just nothing really except just to let you know, Sean and I have met with Paul and Eric about the building reopening for the 6-week call next month. So that's pretty much it. The only other thing is that I've just been going to various Zoom meetings, and I'm sure other people of this as well have heard about the governor and the vaccine rollout for staff and school service personnel based on age and time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul, can maybe you turn that down a little bit so it's easier to hear? Okay, we have updates from our principals and director of curriculum. Mary, you want to start?
Sure. Since we last were together on Friday, February 12th, we had Professional Learning Day in the district, which I think went really well. There was a lot of positive feedback. Our Professional Development and Evaluation Committee will meet to review that feedback and plan our next day. But 6-12 teachers had time to really collaborate around the Google Meet model, what strategies were working best, and I'll be sharing a little bit about that tonight during a presentation later. Our K-5 teachers were also looking at their mid-year data and really making plans for students in addition to some other instructional focuses, whether it's science units that are coming up or the foundations program that we rolled out K3. Preschool was working on their NIAC accreditation, which is ongoing. So there's a lot of different areas for focus for our teachers to come together and plan. Additionally, we've been managing schedule adjustments, as you know, as the weather's had some interruptions. We continue with our I-Ready assessment in middle school, so we've had to bump around a little bit, but we're back on track, so that should be done soon. Working with our PE department, K-12, but really it's we have an annual physical fitness assessment that we have to do this year in grades 4, 8, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And so we're planning early for that because it has some unique parameters this year. So that's something that we're working towards for this spring. And it's nice, we're starting to plan for some summer professional learning and curriculum writing, which is kind of exciting to be focused on those areas. And the professional learning is in conjunction with Region 13 and focuses on the area of early reading and the science of reading, so we're looking forward to that. And lastly, you know, as we get to this point in the year, we're already starting to accept preschool and kindergarten registrations next year.
Excellent.
Crazy. Okay, any questions for Mary? All right, schools. Who would like to start out? There's Brandy, all yours.
Thank you, Mary. And as a follow-up, Memorial really enjoyed our PD Day on February 12th, and it was really rewarding to actually have opportunities to be in the same room. You know, obviously distanced within the same room, talking about teaching and learning and student data. So it was a productive and enjoyable and rewarding day. On Random Active Kindness Week, our special edition of the Cheetah Press really showcased the kindness that was pretty much everywhere. The weather interruptions, we invited families to show how kids were taking care of random acts at home, and so there were a lot of examples of that. Our teachers are completing progress reports, and we're looking forward to having parent-teacher conferences right around the corner. And next week, as Read Across America Week, will be a school spirit week for us, and we're looking forward to that too.
Okay.
Right. Center School on February 12th, we focused on IRE, social emotional learning, and various tech tools for teaching and learning. We're well into planning for our next professional learning day on March 12th. Again, Random Acts of Kindness Week. It's always nice to recognize the acts of kindness taking place throughout the building. And for Read Across America Week and National Reading Month, we're excited to celebrate our love of reading. And both Memorial and Center School have a virtual author visit this Thursday. W. Bruce Cameron, author of A Dog's Purpose, will be joining us virtually. And Student Council has been hard at work collaborating with the Lions as we finish up our shoe drive. And next up, they're going to partner with a student at the middle school, Sonia Venetianer, who will collect supplies for animal shelters.
Great, how you doing, everybody? Well, when we are in school, the middle school, we continue to implement the mid-year testing in reading and math, as Mary was saying. Our basketball seasons are off to a positive and safe start. Mr. Berger actually visited our 8th graders today to officially start planning for their promotion to high school. And as Mary was also saying before, we had a quality day of PD on February 12th. Our teachers were working on assessments, best practices in Google Meet. And then more training from our prep counterparts in racism and inclusivity in school. So productive day.
Mr. Werner.
And from the high school, I had the opportunity to begin welcoming the class of 2025 to East Hampton High School. I met with cohort A group of students today. I'll be back at the middle school on Thursday. So if you want to see my 3rd and 4th shows, please feel free to stop by. I'm meeting with parents on Zoom conference on Wednesday evening to welcome them as members of parents of members of the class of 2025. So we're really excited about that. Our scheduling is in full swing at the high school, and the portal will be open to middle school students at the end of the week. And our students continue to participate in the RAM manufacturing program. Mr. Warner asked me to make sure I highlighted that today. He's at the basketball game tonight. Our basketball season's off to a great start, and it's just great to see kids engaged in the other things that they really enjoy doing at school.
Good. Questions for any of the schools? All right, thank you. Move on to audience of citizens. Any comments? Zoom here? Seeing none, we'll move on to a motion to approve the consent agenda. Nancy K, second. Justin, discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And Amanda will take that as an aye?
Aye. Sorry.
Got it. All right, no recognitions this evening. Student reps, you're by yourself tonight.
Yes, I am. Okay, so our portal on Power School opened last Wednesday for students to complete their course selection for last year, and the guidance counselors have scheduled their in-person meetings with each junior so they can map out and plan their courses and plans for their senior year next year. And then our girls basketball team currently has a perfect 4-game winning streak, and they're playing North Branford right now at home. And then the boys basketball team has a record of 1 win and 2 losses, and they are also playing at North Branford.
Wow. Next year planning already, it's crazy. All right, personnel has not met. Policy curriculum.
Policy, we met as part of this meeting, and we have a first read later on in the agenda.
Okay. Finance, transportation, building, and grounds.
We have not met recently.
Nothing coming up really yet. No. And Learn, any update from Learn this time?
I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but I'm happy to send the minutes to whoever be interested.
Yep.
One cool thing that they're doing at the Marine Academy is they're actually growing coral, and they've grown now so much coral that they're selling it. It's really kind of a neat program.
Have you ever been to that school?
I have. I really want to go.
It's unbelievable.
I
I went there. Actually, I got to do their graduation one year. I was part of it. An amazing school.
It just sounds. It sounds. I wish it wasn't quite so far
I know.
from us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be a really great opportunity for some
Yeah.
of our kids. So.
Okay. Communication, we go on to the superintendent's report.
Okay,
Get our updates.
so just a couple of budget updates, but before I do that, I wanted to share with you, I had the opportunity to be teacher for the day in Kelly LaFael's class. As you recall, we raised, through teacher contributions, close to $9,000 for the United Way this year. And one of the incentives was you could take a few periods off and the superintendent would come and teach you. So I thought a great teachable moment with her computer classes was learning a little bit about marketing. So I asked them to design a little promo cover for the budget. And she liked the idea so much she has all of her students doing it. So I thought I would share with you, this was a middle school student suggestion for the budget cover. And I think we'll use some of these as we talk about the budget. There's another A+ cover for or promo for the budget. Here's another one. As you can see, everybody's got the concept of the East Hampton Bell and hands raised for a budget. I love this one because this really is what the budget process feels like sometimes. And there's the B- one done by the superintendent.
Yeah.
So we'll continue there.
That was middle school?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, all the good ones were for the middle school. The rather bland one was the superintendent's
We
design.
figured that, yes.
I want to give you an update, and for town council members that are listening, this is a relatively important piece of information. In the governor's proposed budget, he is proposing withholding increases to ECS over the next 2 years, which is good for us because we were slated to lose money over the next 2 years. So the plan was for fiscal year 2022 that we would actually lose $100,000. If the governor's budget goes through as planned, the town is going to get an extra $100,000 than they planned. It doesn't mean we have an additional $100,000 to spend. It just means the grant which goes to the town to pay for education, instead of being in the neighborhood of 6.8, will be 6.9. So the town can, if the budget goes through as the governor's hoping it will, we'll have an extra $100,000 than perhaps they thought they had. So that's pretty good news for us. The other thing that I wanted to share with you, and there's a handout at your place, because I know this is a little hard to read, but we got our NESDEC special ed packet that they put together for us. And this is a real tribute to the work of Rod and Karen. If you look at the bottom chart first, you can see that special ed outplacement costs average now around $225,000 per student, which is a pretty big growth if you look at just 4 years ago when it was about $135,000 per student. But now look at the top chart, and our expenditures are going down even though the cost of outplacements are going up. And that's a tribute to the work Rod and Karen have done, because our outplacements were at 12, we're down to 6 at this point. So you look at this, at the cost, average cost of outplacements, if we had 2-3 more students outplaced, we would be well into higher figures there. So this is a nice tribute to what's going on in our schools. We recently had a student move into our district who was in an outplacement, but they were so impressed with our STARS program that we've enrolled them in the STARS program. And typically when you get a student who moves in from an outplacement, they just stay in that outplacement, and the town that they now resides in pick up that charge. So that could be anywhere from an additional $200,000 that we could have faced this year but because we have the STARS program, we're able to put the student in that program. That's a tribute to how powerful that STARS program is and what a good model it is. So Karen, thank you, and I know Roger listening, thank you. I will send the board the whole packet of information from NESDEC, but this is the slide that really, really sticks out. Anybody have any questions on that Rod or Karen could answer?
Paul, the decrease, are those students graduating from the program?
No,
If you could explain the drop in numbers.
Yeah, so for example, you would typically never see 0 students in pre-K through 8 outplaced. That's a tribute to our STARS program and our ABA program for children with autism, that we don't need to outplace those students. Now, obviously, we've just started STARS in the middle school and high school, and hopefully we're going to bring that number down even further. But that's more than just students graduating. That is, us having
The in-house.
in-house programs that certainly meet the district's needs and, more importantly, the children's needs. So, other considerations. The board, I know you've seen this chart. There's just a couple of things that I'd like you to make you aware of. This was the list of things that Chris had added. It does not include the libraries that the elementary schools had wanted, or the scaled back libraries of about 10,000 each. But I do want you to make you aware the environmental science, the line at the bottom. That's the cost to get the books and start the course, but because we're not adding a math science teacher, we would not be able to staff that. So this one really should come off your list of consideration at this point. Just to go through them quickly, the World Language App for Memorial and Elementary, second step program for the center school, STEM resources. We all know we want to get more involved in STEM, and that is a future consideration for budgeting K through 12. And then 2 stipends, and then supplies for our in-house manufacturing program. The only thing that I ask you to consider is we did a lot of work to keep the budget under 3%. So I love all of these items. Please don't get me wrong. But this is a year that, as I explained, my budget philosophy to you was to present a budget that thanked the town council for adding the 4 teachers, but did not push for anything more in a year where they've got to start paying for the town hall. So this was an effort to come in under 3%. With the Chromebook shift, it does move to above 3%, but obviously the Chromebook money now should be considered out of capital, so this increase really has no impact on the taxpayer. It would have been in capital, it's in the education budget, it's just sliding the money over, but I think we made a very good effort to get you under 3%. Now, I respect any decisions that the board makes tonight, please understand that. But I just want to explain that, my effort in putting the budget in front of you was to just get under 3%. So that's a conversation that you are going to have over the next couple of minutes, I think.
Yes.
And then what we'll do is, when we come to new business, we'll actually have you vote on the budget. But at this point, you should entertain your conversations. And I'll move it back to this slide if that is helpful.
Yes, actually, while you're there, I had a question. One other thing that we discussed a couple weeks ago was the foundations program for pre-K at 1,500. Is that still?
Mary, can you speak to that?
Yeah, that would be the cost, because that's consumable materials.
Okay, so it's not, and I just want to be clear, because I know we're talking about not adding programs or doing anything. This is a current program used in K through 3, and it's an opportunity to expand it to the pre-K to continue through Memorial.
For the alignment purposes of the approach.
Yeah.
Obviously, kindergartners, now that we have more capacity at pre-K, it's wonderful because as we're welcoming the kindergarten classes, we already have a good knowledge base on a significant portion of the student population, much larger than we used to. But we still are integrating a lot of kindergartners who are coming from either other preschool environments or maybe even more in a home-based situation. So it allows us to provide that alignment for students in our preschool
So, we're gonna be talking about budget.
Can I just make a comment to Paul, or just something I wanted to point out? I know, Paul, you said a couple times just now that you wanted to present something that was under 3, but I think people should appreciate that it was more than that. It was more than you just arriving at a palatable number, but you've stated throughout this whole process that you're actually putting forth or presenting to us your budget with a mind to not add staff, just move forward with what we have.
Yes, so
And just
I'll
continue what we
you know,
have.
I'll take
So-
responsibility for not including, you know, some of those very valuable things. And it's not that I don't feel they're important, I just felt this was a year that we moved forward with the 4 teachers that we were given last year, slide the whole thing forward, make a few trims, and it's 2.95%. And I thought that was, you know, given where we are with the pandemic, the unknowns, the concern over the town hall, my goal was to put us in under 3.
And that's what did it, okay.
Okay, so in purpose of doing this, here, I had a thought for the board as we discuss the budget. We could go around, talk about if there's any certain items you'd like to remove from the budget, or items you'd like to add to it.
Does it help to have the slide up there or the
Yes.
faces so they can respond?
Can you do the both? Or, no, Amanda knows to speak up.
You can do the little sidebar.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And as we get a list of additions or subtractions, think about maybe get a consensus on each of those. So then when we get time to vote, we will have a final number and final list of consensus items and make that the motion to pass. Are people okay with that? You want to do it a different way?
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I know in Paul's email to us on Friday, there were other potential considerations with 94 Main Street.
Yep,
And
that's-
should we put those on the table now also? And can you get an update on those figures?
Yep,
So that
definitely.
we know what those are.
That was on my list to ask.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that presentation is coming up, but the
Yeah.
two things that I think I spoke to you, or I wrote in your Friday highlights if you had time to read them, was we are going to incur about $50,000 additional in defined benefit contributions for our non-certified staff. That was late information that we just got from the town. Jeff Jilka forwarded those figures to us. And the cost, should you wish to pursue 94 Main Street, which I'm strongly recommending, and the town council will be discussing it tomorrow night, that's going to be about $20,000 each year to maintain. So that $70,000, I'm anticipating a retirement or two. I'm anticipating some shifting of figures that I think we'll be able to absorb that. I'm not asking for money on top of that.
Okay, so for right now, those items are not
Are covered.
added into.
I feel like I've got those covered. We're not gonna need to add to cover 94 Main. And I think with our retirements and, you know, we're still playing around with the bus figures and other
Yeah.
things like that. It's still early. You know, I know we have to have the budget to the town by
week.
March 1st, so
Yeah.
you need to vote tonight. But a lot happens in March and April as you know, as the budget process continues and we get more definitive figures. We're leaving insurance at 5%. It could come in at 4.5%. We could see a little savings there. So I'm assuming we're going to be able to cover the extra money for defined benefits and the cost of 94 million.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so to get, any other quick questions like that? All right.
Amanda does have her hand up.
Oh, go ahead. Amanda, you're supposed to yell at me. Go ahead.
Uh-oh, we're not hearing you.
We can't hear you.
No, Paul totally muted you, so hang on 1 second.
Look at that, you're throwing Paul under the bus.
Oh, yeah, boy.
Everything.
Why not? When he made a cover like that, you know.
Hold on a second. This is one of those with that.
So as we're doing that, I think Karen is all ready with her computer, so as we go through with questions and numbers and all that, she will be able to help us.
Okay, we should be able to hear Amanda now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I was just wondering with that list of added considerations, I'm wondering if, given that, we're trying to keep the number, the increase as low as possible, are there possible grant funding opportunities for some of those things? Like, I'm looking at the mountain biking, and I know there's like Bike Walk Connecticut and some of those organizations, and Early Act being like, I'm wondering if something like the Rotary or the Lions Club or something like that, for the time being, obviously grant funding any of these things isn't ideal because it's hard to maintain consistency, but I'm just wondering if there are, if we could possibly explore grant opportunities right now, given our current circumstances with, I feel like we're always trying to keep the budget low, but, now particularly.
Yeah, I'll speak to the Early Act Club. I don't know if Paul and Mary, when I'm done, have anything about grants. But I did reach out to the Rotary, as we discussed at our last meeting, with the idea of sponsoring the Early Act Club as they do the Interact here at the high school. So they are going to be discussing that. Obviously not enough time to get an answer or commitment, but I will tell you that was something on my ad list to put in. So that's what I have for the Early Act grant topics. Anyone want to address that?
We can look into it, I just can't promise.
Yeah.
I can't promise that.
Yep.
Are those,
But it would be okay to consider that? Possibly?
Yes.
Yes, if we can find a grant for it, I'm not opposed to using it. Now, keep in mind, we do have about $190,000 in ESSER funds from the federal government. However, in the spirit of those funds, they really need to be used for academic remediation, social emotional development.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can use them to cover stipends for a mountain biking club or Early Act Club.
What about
And keep the money in, when we fill out the application, it would be a stretch to make it sound like that was not budget supplanting.
What about the
Well,
second step?
second step possibly.
Yeah, second step,
Yeah.
social emotional
Yeah.
programs, we could fund out of that.
Okay.
And possibly the Duolingo, because, academics.
Yeah, it needs to be more in the remediation of academics rather than pure academics. So that's also a little bit of a stretch.
Understood.
When are we expected to get those funds? Do we know?
The state is outlining a process for us to request the funds.
Okay.
And it's a little different than the PPE funds we got from the federal government, in that all we did was give them a list of receipts. This, we kind of have to create a justification for each item that we're adding.
So then how
we
is-
started playing around with those forms.
With the understanding that those funds seem like they could apply to the second step line item fairly clearly,
Yeah.
how would we carry that in the budget now with the understanding that would be applied for, or is that just a secondary?
Well,
thing
the
either?
danger in putting it in the budget is you're not supposed to supplant your budget.
Yeah.
So that, I would,
It would
in
be
the
if we
spirit
get
of
the
it, to
funds.
count it and then take it out,
Yeah.
makes it look like we're supplanting budget funds.
So then, we, in that specific situation, we don't carry it in the budget, and we just leave it to you to make sure that's handled, basically.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's.
And we've started talking with the administrators on the best use of ESSER funds. We do have limited money, it's gonna last 2 years.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that we may get more money from the federal government, but until we have it, we know we have $190,000 over 2 years. We have talked about math remediation. When we looked at our math scores, there was a direct connection that we could justify that with the state, in that The language arts are, at the top of the 20 towns, and our math is significantly lower than that. So that's an area that would not be hard to justify.
Okay, so I will get it started. I mentioned the Early Act Club. I would be in favor of adding the mountain biking club at 1,600. And what's not on that list that I mentioned is the foundations program for pre-K at 1,500. So since we're on the ad, is there anyone that has other additions they want to put up for discussion? From whether it's this list or other things you've identified, whatever. Amy?
I really would love to see Duolingo added. I checked with the library and we have a different program that isn't really appropriate for,
Okay.
It doesn't have a dashboard and everything that teachers would need to manage it. I think, other towns start language with a teacher in kindergarten, and I think we're really missing out on an opportunity. And this might be a really great way to introduce that to some of the younger kids in our system. And I know it's a heftier amount than some of the other, stipends, but I think it's really important.
Okay. Other thoughts, additions?
Do we know from, on that item, I can't recall exactly, but I don't know if it was Chris Sullivan or if it was Andy, but in one of our last discussions about that program, I thought, my impression was that it wasn't really a teacher hands-off type thing, that it would require, some sort of
More involvement.
special involvement or instruction maybe surrounding that. And I would love to just refresh my memory on that, just because, obviously we are in a difficult time, and, coming back to school and everything, everybody's focus is going to be, on, just even getting the basics, back to where they should be. And I just wonder if that would be considered a little bit of sort of a stretch as far as classroom teachers go, having to focus on that, or if it really is some sort of more student-driven, less staff involvement in using that program. Does anybody recall?
So let's put either Mary or Chris Sullivan on the spot. I think, Chris, it was you last time that spoke to the Duolingo program.
Was it Chris? Yeah.
If you can kind of just refresh our memory in terms of the involvement of the teacher and the students and how it would run.
Yeah, absolutely. So, from my understanding and looking at the app and having limited experience with the app, it is sort of self-driven by the student. So if you were to kind of compare it to iReady with the personalized learning path, it puts the student it meets them where they're at and then builds the program around those language skills. Obviously, if we don't have the staff that know the language, they can't particularly teach into it. But what could happen is during a block where students have choice, that's where the teacher could possibly check in with the students to see how they are progressing on that particular app. But there would not be staff that would actually be doing the instruction of the language.
It's more of an, I think, like an enrichment opportunity, as opposed to when you look at districts that, as you described, have a dedicated teacher and really have a curriculum that builds each year from kindergarten, so that by the time they're in middle school, they're really at a different level. I think this would be more of an enrichment exposure opportunity for students, which still has a lot of value.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to understand it a little better. Thank you.
All right, before we get into removals, any more addition? Add to that column? Yes, Nancy?
I have an additional addition. I would like to kind of echo your thoughts on the stipends for the middle school clubs. I think that when you talk about bang for your buck, they're really small amounts of money that are going to impact a lot of kids. And I think when we're looking at what these kids are coming back from and coming back to and the social emotional aspect of it, I think being able to engage them in as much as possible is really important. And I think that we could do that for a clubs that seem to sort of impact the community as a whole,
Yeah.
For a really small amount of money, and I would also support putting those in as well.
Okay. Yeah, and on that, I want to thank Eric Kissinger for giving those numbers, 40 to 50 kids in respectively those clubs. It's a big number.
And to me, those stipends, the mountain bike club, for example, was started with a faculty volunteer, but, the faculty advisors are entitled, to the stipend, and I don't know how long, that would go on, but to me, it's those two things, the mountain bike club and the Early Act, they're continuations. They're not new.
No.
We're continuing, again, keeping with Paul's theme
Nothing new.
of just, we're moving everything forward.
Yeah.
And that is moving to extremely popular things forward. And I definitely would support, those two stipends, which add, as I recall, together, I think, Karen, it's rounding, maybe it's 0.01 together, round up.
Less than 1.01%.
I'm pretty sure it's gonna be like 2.9, or not 2.
Okay, let's not get to the numbers yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Like to know what's attached.
So that was it for adding. Any suggestions or ideas, something you'd like to see removed from the proposed budget? Removed, cut, eliminated, whatever you want to call it. I know there's nothing to cut. For those of you on Zoom or at home, everyone's sitting here shaking their head, there's nothing to cut.
Just
Okay.
make a comment.
Yes.
I look at this list up here, it's well balanced. There's a little bit, there's foreign language and there's robotics and after school activities and social emotional. As I look at that list and I understand the last item that is our textbooks, as I look at that list, I like that list. That's my only comment. It's fair, it's balanced, and I like the aspect of that.
Okay. All right, since we have nothing there, so we have 4 items on the ad list. I think if this
What were
works,
they again? They were
there was
Duolingo.
it was Early Act,
Mountain
Mountain Biking Club Foundations, which is not on that, and Duolingo.
And what was the foundations? It was
That was the pre-K program for
right, but we don't have.
1,500.
Do we have the numbers on that?
1,500.
Okay, so it's less than.
Less than the stipend, yes.
So, do we have? Maybe Karen can do that. I mean, are we still meeting the 3%?
Well, hold on, let's get a consensus on each of these, and then Karen can work on the numbers.
I also think kind of knowing if we're really trying to keep it under 3, maybe having the numbers are important. I mean, I think we all think that they're important
Yeah,
things. It's not about do we want them, do we not want them. I think most of us would say we want everything
We
on
want it,
there. But
yes.
if we're really going to work to try to keep that number where we want to keep it, I think maybe before we have a consensus,
Okay.
to see what that number smells like.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it's.
I just have one point on the Duolingo. I agree 100% yes, it would be great to have, like Mary's, it's an enrichment opportunity, but keeping with that theme of nothing new. We want to continue what we have, move forward, and grow from there. I don't know if now is a good time to add that. That's just my opinion.
No, I completely understand. It's just, we talk about diversity.
I know,
And
yeah.
should we be putting our money
I
where
know.
our mouth is?
Yeah.
You know.
Other thoughts?
Well, I mean, it's a tricky one, right? Because if my understanding is correct, with the Duolingo thing, you're basically making it so that the kids have access to the app ad free. And then a couple other benefits of, you don't run out of time or whatever the case may be. Is it something that can be, suggested to students even if we don't have this thing? Or do we not want to cross that boundary because it's a commercial thing, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
when you
it was-
have a thought on it, I mean, it's just because we don't pay for that license, does that mean that we can't suggest that kids download the free app and
Yeah, no, like Paul said, we don't want to endorse one that has the commercials,
Right.
because we have no control over that.
Yeah,
Well, Jeff, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
I just think, like, if they're gonna use it as an instructional tool, and teachers are gonna assign work in it and use it that way, we really couldn't do that if there were commercials.
I agree completely. I guess the question is.
So it's a difference between saying, oh, here's this nice enrichment tool that you might want to consider for your kid, and using it as an instructional tool.
Yeah, very much. So where do we fall on that?
Yeah.
I guess pedagogically. I mean, is it a tool that would be used, or is it something that would be kind of suggested?
Well, I mean, I think it would only be used if there's a license. Would teachers suggest it? We don't currently suggest in that way particularly.
That's fair.
I mean, occasionally a teacher may know of a resource that could build a particular skill where they know a student needs additional practice, or again, if a student has mastered and is ready to move on, but we try and have those resources in district because we anticipate that we're going to have students who have those needs across grade levels. So we don't currently make those kinds of recommendations. You know, I think Duolingo would be most effective in an instructional setting. And so I think if our concern is that we want to start to address more language, which has been an ongoing conversation in this district for a very long time, about expanding it beyond its current 612, and thank goodness we're back to 612, but that, you know, do we look eventually at a position that could actually have, I think, more guaranteed impact strategically as a next step of growth in the district. Because right now, if we have the app, it would live in enrichment settings and times when students have choice opportunities, and be able to guarantee that to all students with any level of equity would be difficult in a recommendation or even in enrichment capacity.
Well, that kind of speaks volumes then. Yeah.
So we're not ready
It
yet.
has a lot of value, but I think, like any educational resource, how you implement it is as valuable as what you're implementing.
So it
So
sounds
unless
like
we have the
thought of
structure to utilize the tool, it's, yeah.
Okay, so we're putting that on hold for right now. It sounds like, yeah. Okay, so that leaves the 3 additions of Early Act, Mountain Club, and Foundations for a total of $4,700.
2.96.
So that would make the 2.95, 2.96?
Yes. Karen, you concur?
I think it's gonna round one.
Round down or round?
It's 5,000
It's
is what?
2.964. So I'm counting as 2.96.
Yeah. I know, we're talking about $5,000.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so 5 grand is point.
Every 100 is important.
I know.
That's right.
Okay, so that's where we're at then, those 3 items, at $4,700 to a 2.96%. Is that a consensus to continue?
Can I ask about manufacturing?
Yes.
Is that a class that is being added?
My understanding, I think Eric can talk in as well, the program supplies that are listed there on that list would be the supplies needed to run a program ourselves, which is what is being done at RAM. So currently, we don't have the teacher or the facility to run that program, so we can't use the supplies. Is that correct, Mr. Werner?
That's correct. Our goal is to bring more and more of that program in-house so I have to send our students to RAMs to participate in.
Okay.
So we are offering the 2 required courses that students need to take to go
get
to
there,
RAM.
yes.
And even if they don't go to RAM, those are 2 very good pre-engineering courses just for kids who want to go into engineering. our concern with starting up our program is right now, we technically aren't licensed to be part of the pipeline.
Yeah.
So while it would be nice to have
Is
this
this over the
equipment so we can do
southeast?
some of the in-home things, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yep.
Because I think we're already tapping out some of our technology educated courses. A teacher can only teach 5 courses. So I want to make sure that we don't shut out the robotics and other things as we're adding this manufacturing along the way as well.
Does that answer your question, Amanda?
Yeah, I think so. I'm just, how is it going to impact the students that do manufacturing or that want to do manufacturing
Nothing.
if we don't have program supplies?
No, at this point, nothing. That manufacturing is considered an addition to what we're doing. So by taking that off the list, it does not affect those students that go to RAM currently.
It would be if we moved that program in-house as opposed to going to RAM, right?
Yeah.
So it sounds,
So you're saying we really don't have the staffing for it yet?
Or the facility or the license that Paul mentioned, because right now it's
Okay.
identified for southeastern Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a very good setup that we offer the 2 courses required so the students can then go to RAM. And those 2 courses benefit more than just the manufacturing students, they're very good pre-engineering courses.
Yeah.
I don't think we're ready to specialize in education in the manufacturing course itself, because that would take courses offline that I think we get a bigger bang for the buck right now.
Okay.
so it sounds like it's similar to the Duolingo thing, where it's,
Yeah.
it's a tool for a course that we're not necessarily prepared to
Yeah.
offer.
And Paul, could students just take the 2 classes and not want to go to RAM? Is that
Oh, yeah.
okay too?
Yes, so
That's fine too.
Yeah.
students who are interested in engineering as a major in college, these are great courses to take as well. They may not think of manufacturing as a career, but these are very good pre-engineering courses.
Excellent.
So it's kind of a benefit. The number of kids in the courses are those who can go to manufacturing, those who just want to take some pre-engineering courses. So we're getting a nice bang for the buck right now out of that.
Understood.
Any other board questions on any of the budget items? And Ms. Daly, and you're part of the board here. Any thoughts from you on this as well?
No, not really. I'm sorry, I don't know
No.
what about it.
Yeah, no, that's okay. All right, so open it up. Public comments. Anyone else joining us? Any comments, questions regarding our budget and what we've been discussing? I'm not seeing any, hearing any.
So where would it put us then, Karen, if we were to, with the budget as proposed plus the stipends for mountain biking, early act, and foundations?
With the Chromebooks, it's $33,187,395. That, because we need to include Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so the 2.96, you still need to add the 0.32 onto it.
Okay.
So it pushes that 3.27 to 3.28 unless we have that 1,000th place push us over the top to 3.29.
I'm okay with going to 3.28.
Okay, 3.28.
Okay, so we're clear. Our recommended budget without the Chromebooks is a 2.96. With the Chromebooks, the addition of a 0.32 for a total of 3.28.
And this is $4,700?
That,
Those 3 items you mentioned?
those 3 items, $4,700.
And the Chromebooks were already in the budget, they were just elsewhere in the budget.
Yeah, it went from capital into our operating budget. Okay. We are going to be voting on that coming up. It's a little bit later in the agenda, so let's put that on hold for a moment and talk about the marketing subcommittee.
Yes. All I need to know is would people prefer to meet during the school day, or would that be easier for those that want to participate as a night meeting?
For me, it would depend on the day. So, anyone else? I know Amy, who else?
Participate in what during the school day?
In the marketing subcommittee.
Oh, okay, so that does not involve me, because I couldn't do that.
No.
Martha, are you on the subcommittee? Sorry.
It was Amy, me,
Yeah.
and who else was on it? There was one more
I was
person.
just like a visit, I don't think I was officially on it, I just like.
Okay.
I mean,
I
the
thought it
more
was
the
Martha.
merrier.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, if,
In a nutshell, what are we talking
Kind of strategize in terms of marketing, whether it's the budget or it doesn't have to be just budget, as things come up, getting our message, our word out as a board.
Yeah, I remember the initial discussion
Yes.
about that.
Yeah.
If I was directed, I would volunteer.
Okay.
So I'm just, as Rosemary sends out invitations, should we look for a during the day, late afternoon, early evening, late evening,
would it have?
after midnight?
Yeah.
Time chunk, and we'll schedule the meetings.
Would it have a Zoom? on?
Late afternoon?
Yeah, and look, we can do it as a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
Late
I like it in
afternoon.
person.
Late afternoon,
Yep.
maybe 4 o'clock? Does that, okay,
Yeah.
not 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Free kids with after
Yeah.
activities.
Okay.
Morning?
3,
After
I'm
the
in
kids
line
go.
at center school waiting.
Yeah.
During the day or at night is really later at night. That's for me.
Most of
But-
my standing meetings are morning meetings, so I could do, usually anytime after 1 o'clock.
That would be great.
Okay,
A 1?
that's a possible.
Let's set up some 1 o'clocks.
Okay.
Rosemary is writing down 1 o'clock, and
Thank
she
you,
will
Rosemary.
contact the 3 of you, and we'll send out an invitation to anybody else who would like to
Yep.
participate.
All right. COVID updates.
Okay, so here is my slide that I'm most impressed to share with people. That March 22, we are looking to go back to school. We're going to start spring sports the following week. We are looking at all sorts of after-school activities. When the warm weather comes, recreation is starting up a full program. We'd like to continue with some of the activities that were put on hold, like our jazz band, our after-school choir. Our drama club is planning an outdoor production of Romeo and Juliet on the front steps of the high school in early June. So we're looking to get kids fully involved in school again. The good news for us is the COVID-19 vaccine is now available to teachers. They can start registering on a week from today for vaccines through the VAMS program. They're all registered in the VAMS program. All they have to do is log back in and select a site. And we are hoping that our Chatham Health District will offer a few opportunities, even if it's using our schools, to get teachers and the public vaccinated.
Has there, I know because Russ talked about that at Board of Finance meeting last week, about having clinic. Does he, I know he knows about this, but
Right.
it just
So
happened.
we are working on a March vaccination site at the high school.
Okay.
I just don't know if he's targeting it for 65 and older, or he'll allow teachers to participate.
Okay.
Right now, March 1, 55 and older can participate. So even if he said, no, it's going to be 55 and older, some of our staff who are 55 and older could go to that as well. So it all depends on how Russ sees things happening. But the state, if you listen to anything that the governor said today, we're going to move hopefully very quickly from 45,000 weekly doses to 100,000 weekly doses. So the anticipation is, his plan is to finish up 65, and even though, on Monday when we start 55 and younger, March 22 will be 45 and younger, April 12th, 35 and younger, May 3rd, 16 to 34. That's a great, ambitious schedule.
Yep.
And if Connecticut can pull it off, I think we'd be in a great shape. Along with these, they're talking about separate school-based vaccine clinics for teachers. Now, some teachers would be eligible at certain sites just because they're 55. But what they are telling people is, as you start registering, they're going to require, for teachers, for example, who don't look like they're 55 and older, they're going to require that you bring your school ID badge and everything like that. So, you know, I think things are looking up with the vaccines. And if we could get everybody vaccinated by June, July, I think Connecticut will have a pretty good summer.
Yeah.
By this, you may have your seniors vaccinated by graduation.
Yeah, that would be
graduation,
very
yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
You may have seen that we're publicizing this in the weekly update. We're asking families to be very careful. What we're finding is some of the kids who are getting COVID have a little bit more than just the fever, chills, and the fatigue, and the shortness of breath. We're seeing sore throats, runny noses, and other things that we don't need to mention here as signs of possible COVID. So if any student shows up to the nurse with these symptoms, we are telling them to get a test before they come back to school. The good news is it's not taking 5 days or 6 days to find out testing. It really, even with the PCR test, it's a 24 to 48 hours before you know the test results. So it's not that long. And the doctors can do the rapid molecular test that is accepted along with the PCR. They can do that right in their offices as well. So East Hampton, as of last week, the 16th, were about 14% of our population has been vaccinated. So we're kind of in this medium blue, but you can see around us, this particular part of the state is doing pretty well with at least the first dose. We saw a little bit of an uptick in our weekly cases, which was a little disappointing. But of these 8 cases, 7 of them were kind of connected. We had 3 people in one family, and then another 2 people in a family, and another 2 people in a family. And COVID loves a house. You know, if one person gets COVID in the house, chances are everybody's going to get it. So this was a little bit of a disappointment, but at the same time, we saw kind of an uptick in the community as well. So this was 2 weeks ago, February 4th. The whole state was bright red, but we were doing pretty well. As soon as you drop down below 25, with this map below 20, you stop being red. So we were, of our region, we were like the second lowest, which was really nice. Here's our numbers. February 4th, second lowest. And then the state starts turning orange and yellow, not us. We had actually gone up and every other town went down. So I started publicizing this just because if we're going to open in full on March 22, we need to make sure everybody's doing their best to avoid COVID. Not that people are being careless, but now when we're trying to reopen is not the time for people to let down their guard. So we actually went from February 4th, second lowest, to of these towns, we are now the highest, and we were the only town with an increase. So it's a blip in the thing. Hopefully we're going to drop back down. But you know, when we're getting 4 weeks before we're trying to do a full reopening, you know, I don't want us to be the only town going up. Now we're certainly not as high as we were in December, January, when we kind of reached that peak. The trend is down, but to get a week or so that goes up is not what we want to see. And you can see the other towns around us went down. We were the only town that went up in the area. And there's our cases. We had 13 cases additional from the previous week. So that's the COVID update.
Okay.
Center school clock.
Yes.
So the town has asked the board to consider fixing the clock. Now that Main Street is coming alive, we should have a clock perhaps that works in town. I had hoped to have a quote for you tonight. However, the company that does this type of work and was familiar with the clock, it is impossible for them to get repair parts for this clock. So we are looking at other alternatives. This could be a $5,000 to $6,000 project that if you want to take it on, you would need to consider. But I can't even give you a quote at this point because the replacement parts for this clock just do not exist. So we're looking at other alternatives. Maybe we can just put a nice picture of a clock up
No,
there?
no.
It would be nice to have in the center of the town a clock that works.
Yeah.
All right, but let's wait till the next meeting. I will do my best to get you more information.
Okay.
And then 94 Main Street, our historic building in town. I have a proposal, pardon me?
What was the, what?
You don't remember that?
This is
Oh, yeah.
1866, and this is 150 years later.
Yeah.
In
I don't remember
2016.
1866, no, Chris, I don't.
Well, not that.
Yes,
Not
no.
that.
That's the one I was.
One of these people are named Goff, though, in this picture.
It used to be a school.
Yes.
Well, I knew that, I hadn't seen that photo.
It was the original center
It was
school.
something,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I knew that, I just hadn't seen the photo for it. Okay.
So in your packet is a proposal that the town council will be reviewing tomorrow night. Our goal is to use floor 1 for our transition program at the high school. We would move them out of the space they're in. We would move STARS into that program in the high school. Right now, STARS, it's its first year in the high school. We don't have it in a great program, especially as that program, more students come into it. The ideal place is where the STARS program, the transition program is now. It's not a problem for the transition program to be here because a lot of the little job shadows and internships they do, the people on Main Street have been very good about utilizing them. This just puts them closer to it. We contract with a company to provide the transition program to our students. We get a discount because there's a few out-of-town students. Because they're over 18, this building does not need to be upgraded for education. It can still be a business code because the students are over 18. So very little would need to be done to this space. We put the technology department out of the second floor and we gain that space in Memorial School where the technology is for additional offices or more counseling space. It's going to cost us about $20,000 to operate, but what you can't see in here is the giant garage that both the town and the school use. If the town sells this, we would need to rent a garage unit at, $1,500, $2,000 a month, basically, where we're paying what it would cost to run 94 Main, plus we get the garage. And we keep this as a town building. The town would continue to mow, plow, and take care of the yard, and we would just have to pay for custodian to spend a couple of hours a day or, every other day in there just sweeping up and cleaning up.
So the town is charging us electricity or?
We would pay for utilities.
There's no rent?
No.
No, we just pay for the upkeep of it, if the plumbing needs work or the electrical needs work, we pay for everything.
Just like we
And
did
then
when
the
we were
utilities.
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, same arrangement as before.
I saw in your write-up, Paul, that Karen reached out to DATCO about the reduction of the contract for last year. Now, has anything happened with that?
We're still waiting. The person who we're going to deal with is on vacation right now. And so I would anticipate sometime in the next month being able to sit down with them.
And if they say no?
If they say no, the budget stands as it is in your budget right now.
This would not be an item in the budget? If we vote on this tonight?
If you vote on this tonight and you don't see any savings in the bus, then I'm going to have to hope for a few more retirements than I currently have. And I don't mean that facetiously.
No,
I'm just.
So you're planning on a success with DATCO that we...
I'm planning on some success with DATCO. I'm planning on a couple of retirements. I'm planning on a couple of adjustments that would allow us to keep this building. This is a very good move for us. This is not a negative. It meets the needs of the transition program, our tech department. It keeps the building occupied. It keeps the building owned by the town. At a time when Main Street is coming alive, there would be no more cars parked there than were before, so there's a little extra places down along the street when people park and have lunch in town. So it really is a win for the whole community.
future boards or future superintendents, I understand what the cost is, and it seems reasonable, but down the way, if someone wants to repurpose it again,
Yep.
add more people, the expense to the taxpayer or could be added to the budget. I'm not expecting you to say what
Well,
if
for
I
us to move, another education program in here means, all sorts of upgrades. But, this building is going to run efficiently for offices and for something like the transition program. I don't see us, expanding it into classroom space or anything like that because of the cost. It's a minimal cost. I think we can make it work for there's a few things that we need to do in the building, maybe about $5,000 or $6,000, and we're in it.
What's the building worth if it was sold? Any idea?
It's hard to tell because, it could be offices, but it's, the first floor is not as big as it would seem because of the big vault in there. And the double stairways. Maybe
no idea.
a law firm would buy it. I don't know what the town would get. But then you're giving away an historic building with no guarantee that the people who own it would keep it in its current condition or just flatten it. And, this is 1866, the original school. There's a lot of history in this building. I urge you to keep it, and in another 50 years, we'll put kids out in front of it again. I'll make a note for that, Superintendent.
I was gonna say, you're gonna be here?
I'm gonna do it.
Okay. Any questions on any of that discussion since the budget?
Do we need to put this forward, make a decision on this, the 94, like a motion to do that, or?
I have the proposal to the town council. We have a couple town council members there. Town council members, as you're discussing this tomorrow night, would you like to know that the board endorses this? Or would you like to approve it first and then have me bring it back to the board?
Neither one of them is jumping in, but I will, Paul. I think it would probably be good for the council to hear some sort of a comment from a recommendation, a decision, if you will, from the Board of Education on whether it wants to make this move.
Then I will make a motion that the Board of Ed recommend to the town council that we are in favor of moving our two programs as outlined into 94 Main Street.
Retaining that program. I'll second that.
Jeff second. Discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. And Amanda is up.
I'm a no.
You're a no. Okay, that's fine. And one no. Okay.
And Dave,
Pass that up.
I'll be at the meeting tomorrow night if there are any questions.
Great, thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Dave. Okay. We have a presentation on the Google Meets. And Mary is coming down to do that for us.
I'm just bringing this in case there's certain data, but I'll just take it for you.
Just wanted to have that ready because there's a lot of detail in this presentation, so in case you ask for backup information. So I'm here tonight to talk with you about the Google Meet model. Obviously, it's something that we talked about a good deal, particularly in the November-December timeframe, and we haven't really revisited it. And before we begin, there's just a couple of things I want to share. One is, really this is going to be sort of me narrating a journey that we've all gone on and helping you to think back to sort of how we got there, how we moved through that process, and really be your guide through that. But really the voices you're going to hear tonight are mainly from our teachers. We've surveyed them throughout the process, so I'm going to let them do some of the talking. And I just want to acknowledge their tremendous efforts before I start. This school year has been very challenging, whether you are a student, a teacher, or anyone working in a school setting, much as life has been complicated for everyone in every industry, trying to manage change. And I think one of the things that our teachers have experienced is having to change rapidly, having to respond to the needs of their students, and really being invested in trying to deliver instruction at the highest level, and also engage students. They're experts at knowing how to reach their learners, and the Google Meet model gives them a lot of new ways to do that, but it also presents some challenges, and they're going to share those both with you tonight when we walk through the surveys. Much of this will focus on the 6-12 environment, although I'll talk a little bit about how elementary participated at one point. Okay, so learning model transition. So I'll bring you back with me, even though I know nobody really wants to revisit parts of 2020. We'll just go back to remember how we got there. So the East Hampton Public Schools opened back on September 8th in a hybrid model. And in that hybrid model, students K-12 came to school on site 2 days a week. They had a synchronous learning day 1 day a week on Wednesdays, and then 2 days they were learning from home. But on those days, it was asynchronous. So they really had their materials and their learning information, and they were navigating that. Our younger learners with the assistance of someone at home, and our older learners were doing that more independently. And I'll remind you of some of the difficult details of those days, like Chromebooks where we were waiting to be delivered. So some of that was really challenging. If you were talking to our 6th grade teachers, they weren't able to do synchronous learning days on Wednesdays because our 6th graders didn't have Chromebooks. So there was still a lot of moving parts. And so the fact that everyone was back and we were navigating all of that and people were designing lessons for in-person and at home, on the computer or not on the computer, it was a lot. Then, around October 5th, we transitioned back to full in-person learning 4 days a week. We had that Wednesday bridge where students were remote with their teachers. And then, November 9th, we went back to a hybrid model. So we again had students who were in a situation where they were on site 2 days a week, then going to be learning from home. And around that time that we were making that transition, the State Department of Ed gave guidance to districts about what those hybrid days really needed to look like. Because there had been a lot of creative problem solving around the districts and a lot of variability. And it was much more specific about direct teacher contact time. And so at that point, we began to have discussions on the Google Meet model and how the East Hampton Public Schools would really achieve that guidance from the State Department of Ed. So, as we talked about the Google Meet model, there were a lot of things to consider. How do we equip our teachers with all of the skills and knowledge they need to implement that with fidelity and feel successful? How do we also give people choice about how to do that? Are they going to do it with all of their classes? Are they going to do it with some of them, certain days of the week? So we basically put out that there would be a pilot window where people could start to engage with this process at a pace and rate that felt comfortable to them. It had a pretty large window. They didn't have to start fully until January 25th. And so you see it there, we had our first pilot classrooms come online that very first week, the week of November 9th. It reminded me of the movie It's a Wonderful Life, where George Bailey has the $1 and he's like, trying to make sure that it can grow. We had 2 classrooms who were like, we'll try. And we were hoping that we could find early lessons that would make others feel like, okay, this can be something I can tackle. To feel uncertain was a very natural instinct, so I really celebrate. We had 2 classrooms at the middle school that said they would try. And from there, very quickly at this point, again, we're back in November, Center School was in, our elementaries were also in a hybrid, and so many of the 5th grade classrooms said, we'll try. And then by November 20th, we had 11 teachers between center, middle, and high school who were working in the Google Meet model. So again, really recognizing the efforts of all of our teachers. We had some pioneers who really went out there and just said, we're going to try, we're going to see how this works with our students. And that partnership between those teachers and their students is really fascinating to see how it grew. So we have been surveying our teachers. Our first survey was November 20th, and it's a very small pool. There's only 11 participants in this survey, and they have an opportunity to respond to specific questions. So, has this been a positive experience for my students? And out of the gate, you can see those early adopters in November, they felt very strongly that this was a positive experience and that it was what we needed to be doing. Did they feel that the problems or challenges, we knew those would exist, that they were experiencing were workable, things that they could address and that they would improve? And again, overwhelmingly in the beginning, people are like, finding solutions to things that were challenging at that time. But I'm going to start by acknowledging, when you're first starting something, your sense of the scope of what you're doing is pretty narrow. Am I able to get everyone on the Google Meet and we're talking to each other? That's successful. And as their view grows of the complexity of the task, their feedback is, I'll give you foreshadowing, it's going to get more divine a little bit. So right away we start asking them for the feedback, not just in the, give them a lot of open-ended response. So what specific supports do you wish you had before you started that you would recommend for others? Because they're the first ones, so we want to know what they're thinking. I'm not going to read all of these to you, and I'll acknowledge it's not every single comment that I received, but I did really try and pull representative responses because there's a real range of issues and concerns that came up. But in the beginning, really their concerns were, how do I make this more efficient? Am I going to have all of the technical supports that I need if I'm troubleshooting a new extension on Google Chrome and trying to make sure everything's working? Am I going to have time to plan? Can we start building that in? They referenced very specific programs in the survey responses. Jamboard, for example, is a collaborative whiteboard space that the math teachers were using early on. They really felt like, I wish I knew more about the glitches, but you kind of have to live it a little bit. This last comment, they talk about the pilot is relieving stress because we can just get started. We don't have to know all of it. The process is a learning process. We really wanted to know, is the technology we're providing you helpful? And which elements of what you have access to is helpful? And so we have given every teacher who already has a laptop a secondary device, a Chromebook, so that they could run their Meet on one device and then still use their laptop to run lessons that they might be projecting in the classroom. So right away they were telling us those are very helpful. It's really helpful to have a document camera, which allows them to model so that students either at home or in person can see their thinking. The kind of thing they might have done on the board, they might now do under the document camera. The 2 computers was key to them right away, and also microphones, because we needed to make sure that the students at home could hear everyone in the classroom, and also at the middle school they needed a microphone speaker combination so that we could hear the students at home. It's built in at the high school, but we didn't have that at the middle school. What would you recommend to others? So again, you're going to see these questions repeatedly, and it's really a problem-solving process for us. They're going to have the most important information for us about what works. And in the beginning, it's just the basics. Can we have Bluetooth speakers? Make sure everyone has a microphone. Ideally, this we have not been able to solve, and they've asked for it again and again. They want like larger screens to see everybody at home because they have to look at the smaller screen on the Chromebook. But obviously, there's certain limits of what we could provide. Is there anything that you want us to know that we didn't ask? We ask this every time. And you can see their thinking at this point. Attendance is something I'm concerned about. What if a student doesn't come? This has been positive for my students and I. I would love to have more time to talk about how I'm going to do this. Making sure that our students feel connected is a big success. And then also at the end that, it's an improvement. They were giving us the feedback that this is an improvement over what we were doing. And it's not going to work well on each and every day, but we feel like we're moving in the right direction. So this is November 20th. So what do we do with that feedback? Right away, we establish some outcomes. So knowing that before you start, having the right technology was going to be key, we worked with the principals so that as the teachers had choice about when to start, it meant it was sort of a moving target. We had to know when each teacher was starting, how many classes they were going to be working with, what was their schedule, and what did they need. So we had a shared spreadsheet where we would sort of track each teacher, their start date, and their requested technology, and every time IT was able to get that technology to them, it was noted there. So we could really track who was starting, when, and what they had access to. We had some individual requests in specialized content areas. Obviously, your English teacher or social studies teacher is going to have different needs from our music teachers, our tech ed teachers. So we really looked at those individual requests in complex content areas to move those requests forward. Some teachers requested specific technology that they wanted to pilot on behalf of a department. An example is the math department. Math is a challenging area to do well in this model, especially because they do a lot of modeling, and normally students are sharing their thinking and showing each other their thinking a lot. So we had a couple of math teachers who asked for some additional resources to try touchscreen technology, which is very helpful in math. And then all teachers received, as they started, a minimum of a secondary device, a microphone, or a microphone speaker combination. So as we moved into December, we were getting some good momentum. The next survey was December 4th. So right away, we're already up to 17 participants. You can't see it there. So has this been a positive experience? So we still see that in overwhelming majority, 11.8% strongly agree, 70.6% agree. You know, we still have some neutral, and we have some more specific feedback. You can see, you know, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's working for some, not for others. Has it been a positive experience for me as a teacher trying to manage this model? Again, still a strong majority agree. And some are saying it's positive and negative. It's challenging to plan this way, to transform their lesson into something that's going to work simultaneously for students in the classroom and at home. The students at home can't see everything in the classroom, for example. So it's really hard to design those lessons. And that's going to start to become a clear piece of feedback from the teachers. It was easier in that before they had to design lessons for in-person and lessons for home, but now they had to integrate that. It's a different kind of challenge. Are things workable? Do you feel like it's improving? Are the problems that you're encountering manageable? Again, the majority are saying yes, but they are starting to bring up other issues to us. So this is a sign that we're getting further into the work. It's actually a healthy sign in the change process that the feedback is getting more specific and more targeted. I need help with this with my Wi-Fi. This particular program isn't loading. We're starting to have an increase of requests for support. What supports do you wish you had before you started that you would recommend for other participants? Because again, we only have 17 teachers at this point. So none, I just had to experience it. You just, you know, some people's attitudes just have to get in there. Taking time to observe other teachers is a piece of feedback. That's something we should be doing a lot before starting. The opportunity to review some of the extensions. Google has a ton of extensions you can add to enhance your meet experience. Attendance taking procedures, different ways to hold videos in place that students can access. So they wanted more opportunities to review those things. Making sure they were celebrating the mic. That's been a huge game changer. We're so glad we have that. So attendance procedures. Again, we're starting to see themes of areas that the teachers would like support around. And by this point in December, elementary has gone back full time. So we're just talking about middle and high school at this point. Did we support you well with the technology? What helped the most? Again, so, everything was positive at this point. They celebrated IT. As you can see, technology has been great so far. They really felt like when they needed something, they got it. They could ask questions. They could get that help. And again, they're just, you know, letting us know that so far we're on the right track. Is there anything you would like us to know that we didn't ask? So you can see some there, they give us specific feedback. TileTab is a good program, so this is a way for us to start tracking that, what's working for them that they're finding and researching. But no, it's really difficult, and I'm grateful for Wednesdays. So that was something Paul had put in the model, that they had sort of a dedicated planning day, and their feedback was, that's really supportive of us in this process, because it takes more time to plan these meaningful lessons. And you see them speaking about Impero there, which is something we had put in place in the district prior to COVID as a way so that as a classroom teacher, when you're monitoring students on their devices in the classroom, you can basically see all of their screens and know what they're doing, so that if they're tempted to wander, you can help them come right back. But it was really helpful in this model because if the student's on their school issued device at home, we can still see their screen. So it allows us to troubleshoot live with them. If they're saying, I can't get on the meet, we can actually see what's happening on their screen. So early on, as some people were saying, oh, that's so helpful, does everyone know how to use that? Because we hadn't originally rolled it out with this outcome in mind. So what did we do? We started to think about, all right, what are our attendance procedures? How do they need to be modified and communicated specific to this? Because keep in mind, we're still in a pilot, so not everyone's doing this. Not all classrooms are online. We have to start communicating common expectations to our students and families about how we expect students to participate and to emphasize that they should be on that district-issued device, because that's how we're going to be able to help your child more. We increased communication and guidance to teachers about how to use Impero, and at the middle school, to their credit, the teachers started their own Wednesday meetings where they would share problems they were encountering and how they were troubleshooting those. So we had some PLC time that teachers were using on that Wednesday. Questions so far?
The 11 participants and 17, did you have to strong arm those people to respond?
No,
that seems low.
No, as people had total choice about when to start, and so there's other things happening like Thanksgiving and grades and things like that. So people were sometimes making choices based on I want to make sure quarter one is done, my grade's over, and then I'm going to start. You're going to see the numbers are about to start to go up. So here we are. This is December 18th. So this is the last survey we did before the holiday, and we're already up to 37 participants here. So we can see that, again, when we have more people and they're further into the work, the feedback is going to become more diversified. But the vast majority are still saying it's either they strongly agree that it's a positive experience or agree, or they're neutral. There were many people taking the survey at this point who they were just kind of coming on as of December 14th. So it was their first week. Has it been a positive experience for you as a teacher trying to deal with this model? Again, about half are saying yes. We have a bigger chunk who are neutral in this group, but they are also in week one. And some are saying, I can't say I strongly agree in every case. It's been a little bit of a mixed experience. Are the issues things that you can work around when you face problems? And this was a positive piece of feedback December 18th when we had a larger group of teachers working on this. That's still half of the teachers agree that yes, these are solvable problems. Another 10% strongly agree. And when you see those smaller slices, in most cases, that's one person. So we start to get more specialized feedback there where they're saying, yes, but I want you to know this, that, or the other. And you can see some of that there. So now we start to see, we're further along in the process, the feedback gets a lot more detailed about what's working and what isn't, because as people get further into it, they better understand those things. And they give us feedback like, I think we should have all started at the same time, which was part of a longer stretch of like, the pilot and the rolling nature became something that both teachers and families felt like it's hard to know exactly who's doing what. So there was this kind of energy rising of we all need to get on the same page, which again, very authentically was happening. It's okay to know what I want to know before I started. It's not all going to be perfect. Go out and watch other teachers, make sure you do that. How do we get students to participate more? This was something that really started to surface for teachers in December, but also will carry through about maintaining engagement, making sure we're consistent in our expectations to families. So again, you're seeing much more detail here. And the feedback ranges from things about, should we have started all together to, we need really specific feedback about how we're going to share videos in person and at home and that don't lag. That's actually what they were concerned about. The video would show at like a slightly different pace and they could hear each other, so it was distracting to the learning. So those were the kinds of issues we were problem solving. Did your technology support you? Again, they start to give more specific feedback. There's themes, and Piro's great, the microphone is great, my internet is laggy. We were finding certain spots. Because now we have everyone online all over the school. We're finding spots where the IT department was pushing into to make sure that if there was too much of a pull in one area of the school, they could try and offset that. That continues to be an ongoing issue. We start to get really specific interactive programs that the teachers start celebrating here. Nearpod is one you'll hear me talk about again. That they are identifying solutions that make the instruction more valuable in the setting. Again, really just consistent in our questions, what technology is working for you. But you start to see, again, things like whiteboard.chat or Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a tool that you can use to communicate learning or to provide information to students. Whiteboard.chat is a great way to encourage students to share ideas and almost talk to each other across the platform. A lot of teachers started partnering the in-person learner with a student at home so that you're always kind of engaging across the settings. And Whiteboard.chat is one that supports that process. They also used humor, laptop with more memory, and a magic wand, letting us know that some of it feels a little overwhelming at times. And also things like it's not always things within our control. That was a piece of feedback that a teacher gave. I feel like what we can control is going well. But when they talk about connectivity and Wi-Fi, it's not always for in-person learners. Also talking about students who are at home getting bumped off or not able to connect for one reason or another. And the teacher here has very limited ability to troubleshoot that with the student. Again, is there anything you'd like us to know that we didn't ask? So again, inconsistency with connectivity. Some of the older Chromebooks showed their age a little bit in this process and their limitations, but also kind of, students are grateful that they have this opportunity. I can't imagine not teaching this way. It was great to see kids at home feel connected to them, but yet, the last comment, I'm still not sure this is the most effective model for me using with my students. So As we went into the holiday break, we're getting a groundswell of teachers in the experience, and we took a break from surveying, because there was, several surveys. And in January, when the teachers were coming back, we were also moving into the end of Q2 at the middle and high school. We had a lot of movement between remote and in-person learners, and everyone was gonna have to come on to the process by January 25th. So we decided to kind of hold off, and we didn't survey again until February 12th, the PD day. But before I show you that, just outcomes, what did we apply in January? Teachers, again, encouraged to visit each other, because now we had a pretty good amount of teachers who were into this work. Ensure that schedules are clearly published to families of when, if you have a 6th grader who says, I'm supposed to be on a Google Meet, exactly what are those minutes? Because, it's not like the rest of the world where you'd say like 2 to 2:30, it's 1:57 to 2:29. So we're gonna make sure everybody was crystal clear. And increase communications about our attendance expectations so that we can be really consistent. And then also, what do we do when students aren't coming? And using our progress monitoring systems at both schools and following the same attendance protocols we do for in-person learners. Plan professional learning, so we used part of Friday, February 12th. We knew right away that we were going to need to do that and improve our systems of reporting any issues in person for connectivity to IT. February 12th. Now, we have the full teaching staff of the middle and high school in the process. And you can see that we have a range of feedback. There's only one strongly disagree. There's two strongly disagree, and one is a different purple. But again, it depends on the class. It's better than asynchronous, but not always exactly what we want. So we see a stronger range of feedback. Positive experience. Again, this disagree or strongly disagree, agree versus strongly agree. In talking to teachers, they really wanted to be able to say, it's been positive, but this piece is easier, but that piece is more challenging. So again, I think in those smaller pie pieces, it's usually 1 or 2 people commenting there. This one I was pretty happy with. They felt like overall, things were being still able to be resolved, but we've started to get a sense of what the limitations are of the model. Now I haven't been doing this for 2 weeks and feeling like, oh, I solved those problems, it's moving on. Now I'm realizing where some problems are not so easy to solve. If a certain Chrome extension can't be downloaded because the Chromebook that the students have is too old to run it, which is the case in some situations. That can be a frustrating experience. So by the time we're looking at February 12th, we have enough information to know what we can solve and what we're not going to solve this year. So I added different questions this time because we're further into the work. So what has been the biggest challenge in the Google Meet model? Student engagement, 46.2%. Attendance, 12.8%. And then 20.5%, the green, is translating your course content into, you can't see the whole thing, into a lesson that works for both in-person and at-home learners. So those are the issues. How do I keep my high school students really engaged in the lesson, and how can I make AP Bio work really well for those in-person and at home? How do I take AP Music Theory and make that work? How do I do, advanced art? How do I do culinary? There's some really challenging environments to make that all operate seamlessly. So those are the kind of big key themes there. The good news is it wasn't technology issues. Generally, that wasn't the biggest concern. It's a concern, but it wasn't, always the biggest one. Or having access to the right platforms. I think the teachers felt supported, but the model has some limitations in their mind. I'm not going to read all of these to you, but again, what do you wish you knew? You can see the change in the kind of feedback is getting really much more advanced than the first round. It's like, I wish I knew very kind of basic things. Now, I wish I knew it would feel like teaching 2 different classes at the same time. That is something you just have to get used to. But some of it's very basic. I wish I knew the automatic attendance taking up front. Breakout rooms. Some teachers are finding direct instruction isn't the only way to teach using Google Meet model. We can still have student-centered instruction. So there's just a real range of experiences, and like anything, this is where we would normally, if we're going to be doing this indefinitely, start to say, all right, who's sort of become an expert at this, who's become an expert at that, and start matching teachers. And we did a little bit of that on this PD day, and we'll continue to do so, as you'll see. what is the best thing you've learned? So it's small, I'll try and read them to you. There was a lot of positives. So using Impero, which is that student monitoring tool that I talked about, how to reach all learners, how to overcome tech issues. I learned that many of my students prefer this model over just the post-it assignments. Kids are resilient. How to use Jamboard. So they have all these new tools. Teachers are flexible. So there are a lot of things to celebrate. And you know, my favorite one is just how important it is to see the faces of our students, and they're not just talking about the fact that they can see them on the days they're not in school. They're talking about you can't see their full face when they are in school. So, you know, it really speaks to the heart of this work. It's hard work, but in the pursuit of something hopefully really positive for our students. And again, one of the things we're really monitoring is now beyond just devices and do you have what you need, what are you learning about technology in instruction? So they're talking about, in certain places, very specific tools. You'll notice the one that says Mote for feedback, which is a way to leave voice notes on student work. You can record yourself talking to the student if you're giving feedback on writing. So then when the student's at home, they can listen and hear their teacher literally talking to them. No more paper. This is a benefit. You know, I'm learning to be more efficient. I'm learning to track things differently. That beyond awesome, the support and quick response to issues has been excellent. I give all the credit to Rich Fielding on that. It's well deserved. Having an extra device supports all kinds of instruction and experimentation. You know, this is sort of one of those situations where necessity is the mother of all invention, right? We sort of had to, and so it's not always comfortable, but it does produce a lot of learning. But then what are your issues? Again, this is where we're going to continue to problem solve. Some of it is challenging. Students at home can't see everything in the classroom if I'm trying to demonstrate. The limitations of this model are not from technology, but result from the overall flaws of teaching in this model. It's just challenging to deliver everything that you want under these circumstances. Or the over-reliance on technology takes away from other modalities of teaching and learning. And we know, typically as teachers, we would really want to diversify and vary how we're introducing information. You have less ability to do that when you are relying so heavily on technology. Because remember, your in-person students have to be on their devices too in order to engage with the at-home learner. So you're really tied to the computer and what it can and cannot do. So outcomes. We continue to make progress in this area. Nearpod was one of the interactive programs that teachers have commented that they would like to have more exposure to. So I'm happy to report just last week I was able to secure a free pilot, K-12, so even our elementary teachers can explore how they could use that in person. Nearpod's going to come out and do some at-no-cost PD for us on March 12th, so our teachers can ask questions and feel even more skilled in the use of that. We applied for and were awarded blended learning coaching days through the Connecticut State Department of Education and the RESC Alliance. They put out a call for districts to request days in December and January. I applied and we were awarded days, so we'll be able to really give targeted professional supports to teachers who request it, and we're in the process of setting that up with our teachers now. And we have a committee of teachers, 612, who are working on kind of taking all of this feedback and creating one generalized site where we can list all the resources and learning. We want to sort of capture this moment. We may be looking to go back to full in-person learning March 12th or March 22nd, but we know there's still going to be a need to share what we've learned in this process and potentially still employ it when students can't be on site for any given reason. So the major trends and takeaways from everything we've had to learn and troubleshoot and create in the last few months is that it's been a tremendous effort by our teachers and students to engage in meaningful teaching and learning. It's been quite a journey. We've learned and been reminded of the benefits of community and connectedness across settings and in this difficult time where there are so many limits. That instructional challenges do remain due to the limitations of students in different locations. The fact that we run into technical difficulties, as you've all experienced in your own lives one time or another. Sometimes things don't work the way you planned. And just maintaining consistent engagement for our students. And so while this is an improvement over asynchronous learning, it doesn't fully replicate what can be accomplished by full in-person learning. So that's sort of where we land at this point. So it's better than the alternative, but it still has some limits. And we continue to try and grow our practices to support our teachers and most importantly, our students.
Mr. Goff, not to put our student representative on the spot.
Go right ahead, I like to do
But
that.
I'd love to hear your impression of, you're here A days, right?
Yeah.
So Thursday, Friday, you're at home. Just describe your experience on Thursday and Fridays.
Well, I was lucky because a lot of my teachers, I think by the second week of December, all of my classes we were using the pilot model. So I think that there was less of an adjustment phase. I think
You just
for a
got thrown
while.
right into it.
Yeah, and so I think for a while there was a little bit of an issue like scheduling because you're home, so you're trying to figure out everything in terms of like when your classes are. But I would say the only major difficulty for me was just Wi-Fi because at one point I had 2 college students and then my dad's a teacher and then my sister also goes to the high school, so my Wi-Fi was a little bit crowded. But I think that now, by the beginning of January, all of my teachers really hit their stride, and it's been really smooth sailing ever since. So I think I liked it better than the asynchronous learning on Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays for me because I'm in Group A.
I'm glad our student ambassadors spoke up. Is there a way to get other students? Because I was going to ask if you could invite some students into tell other. Can we invite a few students in, or are willing to come
Well,
in and
I hope I can do even better in that we, just today, the 612 committee met to finalize our student survey that's going out to just kind of get their voice and feedback, so I can share that at our next meeting.
just with the feedback, or with students too?
Well, it's difficult to get them here physically. I mean, we might be able to have some of them Zoom in or Google Meet in, but we can also have our survey results, which would be much more comprehensive.
Okay.
Because that'll go out to all middle and high school students.
And by the time we perfect it, we're going to have everybody come back in full.
Well, no,
But still, we would want to offer this for students who, have to quarantine at home. We'd still like to be able to offer this. This is a possibility.
And shame on me for not asking this question months ago to have someone come in to talk about their experience, but it is what it is.
I think it's been very much a work in progress as it's expanded fully across all classrooms. I agree that I think by the time we came back in January, most people were utilizing it within their classrooms. But we got full implementation on January 25th. And with some of the days off and interruptions in that window of time, we wanted to give people a little time before we surveyed them again, because there was a lot of surveys at one point.
We've also held back on inviting students in. Usually we have some presentations at the beginning of the meeting for our students. We're going to start next month. We're going to have students Zoom in. We have the CAPE Students Awards, and since it's Board of Education Month, you're going to meet your CAPE students via Zoom from the middle school on the 8th, and your CAPE students from the high school on the 22nd.
And I think even in the small window that center school teachers were doing the Google Meet model before they went back to in-person learning, they felt like that really helped them when there have been quarantine issues where a student is learning from home. So I think, I was joking with Paul, like we're going to have everything perfect, and then it is. We're going to be going back. But there's, number one, still going to be cases where we're having kids remote in likely. But also, there's been a lot of learning and things that we can transfer from this experience into the classroom. And our teaching team, to their credit, is eager to capture that and share their learning to just further enhance instruction in general. So it's been an experiment and a lot of learning, but I started with this and I'll end with giving the credit to our teachers who've really gone out of their way to make sure that they could give that instructional connection to their students.
And it's not all for naught. I mean, the obvious learning that's happened here aside, I mean, the hybrid learning environment is a huge area of growth in the higher ed market. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, the kids are going to see this.
Yeah.
It's not going away.
No.
It's going to be utilized a lot in that environment. Hopefully not K-12 so much.
Right.
We can avoid those sort of things, but I mean, with the obvious exceptions. I mean, you mentioned when students can't be in class, which would be few and far between. But so my question, I guess, as you get to the end of this kind of forced full adaptation of this, are you starting to think about some of these digital tools as they may be used in the classroom?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, in fact, some of them that I didn't read that talked about like Nearpod being a game changer. Teachers said things like that, like, I love it, I hope you'll get a district account. I mean, it was really by reading the surveys that I called Nearpod and was like, you want to give me a free district tryout, right? And they were like, yes. So we are doing that now with the intention of looking at, you know, all of our digital tools, what's staying and what isn't. And our K-5 teachers have made changes in their classroom based on their experience with some of the remote instruction. And we know that, as you point out, so many things in life we'll go back to hopefully a lot of things, but there are, you know, if you don't want to drive to the meeting and you want to zoom in, you know, those start to be those options, and schools will need to incorporate much of this learning into how we do business, whether that's an instructional tool or just more flexibility. And that's something that in the, you know, thought market of K-12 education, there's been a lot of conversation about flexible environments for students so that they can, you know, do that internship but still access a class and things like that. And there are a lot of leaders in our world who are saying, you know, what can we take from this to make schools not just reactionary to a very challenging global pandemic, but also continue to grow in their flexibility reasonably to best support student learning. So I think Nearpod for us right now has emerged as the kind of major takeaway that we want to explore. And I think additionally, Google just last week announced a number of rounds of updates that they're doing to Drive, to Meets, to a number of features. And we're going to want to look at some of the features that we were using. I mean, Google was a huge component of our instructional process pre-pandemic. We want it to remain, and they're shifting some of their features and what's free and what isn't. So we're going to need to monitor that because certain things have started to become just part of our world, and we want to hold on to those for instructional purposes. And collaboration, obviously, one of the benefits of the whole Google Suite is the collaborative components for students and teachers.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, as much as we are all going to want to run screening from this thing when it's done, you know, if there's any opportunity to pull some positive aspects from it, you know, let's embrace that. I mean, so everyone had to learn how to do this. I'm sure that was a stumbling block in kind of full adaptation in the digital education world. Had to learn it, now let's do it, you know.
Right, and there actually were, I mean, when I go back to that slide, the best thing that, and I took a selection, and like I said, I tried to be representative, but there's so many things that I think were positives from this experience, whether it's, you know, I think technology is one of those things and its integration. One of the responses, I was nervous to try something like, there's something, I keep referencing Nearpod, there's another product called Pear Deck that teachers are using as well. It's like, oh, I was nervous to use it, but then I had to on a snow day. Is it on this one? Yes, I was afraid to use it at the start of, sorry, that's a mistake, start of the year, but once I started using it during a snow day, I love it. So it sort of forced people out of their comfort zone. Somebody else said that somewhere in the presentation, that they were forced to try things that normally they would maybe, you know, find ways to not have to do that. So I think the technology skills of the teaching team really expanded. I think people have been amazingly collaborative. Whether it's that Wednesday meeting that the middle school teachers come and share, whether it is ideas and brainstorming across departments or even within, I think the teams have really worked hard together to find what works. And so I just think there's been a lot of growth and collaboration in the process, so it's positive.
Have there been any surveys done with parents on what they see their students learning at home? Is there any surveys?
We have not done a parent survey. But that's something, you know, I think our student population was the next group whose feedback we wanted to get, but that's something we could look at.
I appreciate that.
No, the surveys, we can get them going. It's just,
a student and parents' interpretation is something that could be completely different.
Sure.
It's nice to have that trifecta of teachers, students, and parents
Yeah.
involved all in that. So if you can do a parent survey, that'd be great.
no problem.
Thank you, Mary, for designing a survey that, you know, was more than just a yes or no. This clearly, there was a lot of thought put into it, and thank you to the teachers for participating.
Yeah.
You know, it's only as good as the feedback that you get and the responses that you get, and these are actionable things that, you know, you could see, and these open-ended questions
Yeah,
Great.
it gave us a lot of opportunity to talk about, things, there are things that like we couldn't change or chose not to based on certain tipping points. Like for example, at the middle school, if you remember from the beginning of the year, we are running our middle school rather differently. Normally the students are switching classes, this year they're staying together, and the teachers move. And at one point we were toying with, are we gonna start letting the students move because it might be easier for the teachers from a technology standpoint to not be moving with their technology. And there were pros and cons to either, as you can imagine, with the safety, the routine, but in terms of the challenge of moving locations. And ultimately we didn't make that adjustment because March 22 was sort of coming onto the horizon. Does it make sense to make a major change like that when we're about to bring more students on site and we're going to continue with the cohorting that we've been doing? So the feedback from the teachers was helpful because it forced us as a community at each building to reflect on how we were doing things, instructionally or otherwise, to process those decisions and then to reach some consensus about what we are or aren't going to do to solve certain problems. So it was a great mechanism to really get their feedback and their, I appreciate their directness and honesty always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. What did you say, the next meeting or the meeting after for the student survey?
Yeah, we should be able to have it for the next meeting.
The 22nd, just remember, you do not have to schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
Because the 22nd, we have our board workshop, and it's the public hearing on the town and school budget.
Yep. Okay. Unfinished, the non-lapse in education fund.
Mr. Goff, I'm going to suggest that since there have been recommended changes to the policy, the draft policy, supported by the policy committee,
Yep.
that you send it back to the policy committee with the town's attorney's comments, let the policy committee bring a version to you to vote on.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest the same thing.
All right, thank you very
Sorry,
much.
Jeff, I
No, it's hold my counter!
I know. I was hoping that as well. Okay, spoke for everybody. All right, so now we are back to the budget for vote. So let's start with, I'll make this motion to approve the Board of Education 2021-2022 budget in the amount of, and Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, $33,182,695. That includes.
That's before the 4,700.
Sorry?
That's before the 4,700.
That's before?
33,187,000.
Oh, let me fix that.
Can you say that slower one more time?
33,187,395.
95. I had that written down, but didn't,
Thank
yes.
you.
So I'll modify that. I didn't get a second yet. So, motion to approve the Board of Education 2021-22 budget in the amount of $33,187,395.
I second that.
And Jeff seconds. So now we can open discussion, comments on that. Amanda, speak up if you have anything.
I will.
Okay.
No, I feel like those three items are, low cost, high impact, and I believe that all three actually do the job of continuing, putting forward what we, have in place, the foundations. It's just deepening that reach.
Yep.
It's not new. The
It's
clubs are
existing.
happening.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just moving things forward exactly in the theme of, what Paul has presented to us. So-
We're maintaining the request from the town council to not introduce new.
Right,
Mhm.
I think it's,
right.
it falls under that magic 3% line,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
Nancy, Justin, Martha, any other thoughts?
Agree?
Agree?
I would like to, the ones that were on the list there that were, the tools for programs that we can't support yet, I think we need to address those next year
Yeah.
and, be able to actually offer those programs.
Okay. So with that, we will take a vote then. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
1, 2, 3, yes. No?
No.
And no. Okay. All right, so there is the budget that will get to the town hall by our deadline of March 1st, and then it's in their hands. And then I want to thank, I think Rodney's still there, and the principals, and Karen, and Paul, and Mary, and all the staff. Again, this goes back for 5-6 months of this budget planning to get to this point. And the amount of work that they put in over those months to get us here is amazing. So thank you to all of you. Policy, we have a first read, and low down on that, please.
Well, that was actually one of the meetings I was not able to be at, so if somebody doesn't mind jumping in on that.
That's right.
More eloquently than I.
Yes. Well, given this is called a remote work policy, given what is happening in our time now, you can see, reading it, just that it is putting into policy and memorializing, some structure around what that looks like. What is it? You have a definition, guidelines. This is not something, that takes the place of sick leave. Talks about some liability and what is expected, of staff who are approved by the superintendent to work remotely. So does anybody have any questions? I mean, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but if you have questions.
So this is basically new based on the last year of life and what it's evolved into, yes?
Yes.
And was it worked on with the teachers union also?
Well, this is guidelines that really are not negotiated.
Okay.
This has to do with our right to offer remote work.
Okay.
It's not a privilege, it's really not negotiable.
Okay.
So I think this is our fair attempt to describe a practice that we kind of have put in place. But something like this is not up for give and take, because it really is determined by us. Do we have the remote work? So we can't necessarily offer everybody remote work. In fact, some of the people who are doing remote work only are doing it at a substantial pay decrease because they had an underlying issue with a family member at home. They chose to stay at home. We were able to offer them something, but it's not something that we can just put out and have a give and take with the union. So I think we've treated everyone very fairly, but there are certain guidelines that we kind of have to hold the line to. That remote work isn't a right or a privilege; it's when needed, if available, type of situations.
Okay, so that'll come back for next time for the second read, and any questions, get those to Paul by then.
If I could just embarrass Jeff for a moment, he does a great job as policy chairman, for the record.
Wow.
Good to hear.
Write that down.
Wow.
I learn a lot from you, and then Nancy, you can be a good coverage day afterwards.
Jeff got a compliment.
Doesn't happen very often.
Future business.
I love working with people who are smarter than me in certain things. Not everything, but certain things.
Next meeting, we have 5:30 executive session. That's on the 8th at our next meeting, and then we'll be discussing the reopening plan at that point. And that meeting I will have to Zoom from. That'll be fun. So you can run the meeting. It's hard to run a meeting on Zoom with people in person.
We'll have a separate link for the executive session.
Okay.
I'll make sure you have both links.
All right, personnel. Audience of citizens, we've made it to the end. Any other final comments or thoughts? Hearing none. All right, we have the calendars. Motion to adjourn. Martha. Jim second.
I'll second.
Good night. Thank you, everybody, again for all the budget work. It is now our budget we are supporting for the town.
Good night, Zoom audience. They're just hanging out.